So getting into today's presentation, turning passion into action by making council accessible to all by the Civic Dashboard team. The Civic Dashboard team is made up of over 35 volunteers who care deeply about the present and future of Toronto's democracy. They're a team of user researchers, policy experts, programmers, designers, illustrators, project and product managers, and all engaged Torontonians. And they're welcome for everyone to join, incredibly fun, and also very good looking. Taking it over to the Civic Dashboard team.
Okay. Folks online, can you hear me? Yeah. Folks in the room, can you hear me? Sweet. Okay. Quick show of hands. Who over the past week or so voted in the federal election? It's a good, honest, civically engaged group. And I understand that there could be non-citizens in the room. Quick show of hands. Who here has ever been in a city hall committee room before? This room more than most. Raise your hand if you have deputed at a city hall item or an item in our municipal election sometime in the last year. Okay, so even in this very engaged group, we're talking, what, like 5% of the room or so who have deputed in the last year. Now, awesome that everybody voted in the federal election. We all get to be one voice among, I think, 19 million from this, in this election. And we get to vote in our federal election once every, call it 2 to 4 years. There are hundreds of items that come up through city council every week that are relevant specifically to you and the things that you care about. And instead of being one voice in millions, you could be sometimes one voice in 3, in 5, or in 10. And everybody here, regardless of whether or not you are a citizen, is allowed to either submit a comment or speak at any one of these items. You don't have to bundle it into a candidate either. If you care about a thing, like let's say a bike lane on your street, you can sit right there and a group of city councilors has to listen to you for at least 3 minutes. It's a bit of a power trip, but also it is an incredibly powerful way to get involved in our democracy. Now, about a year ago, a few of us were, is sharing happening? Yeah, we got it. Cool. Sharing's happening? Sharing's happening. Okay. About a year ago, a few of us ended up at Democracy Exchange. This was in 2024. Democracy Exchange is a civic engagement conference where all of Canada's premier policy wonks come together to talk about how all of us non-wonks should be able to engage in democracy. And the takeaway that some of us had from this first experience with this conference in 2024 were twofold. One, that we need to motivate people and explain to them just how important democracy is. And 2, think global, act local. These were both like tried and true themes. However, you had this feeling of the whole point is to tell people how important it is. And if we tell people just how important democracy is and just how important it is for them to engage, specifically around election time, then more people will do it and we will have a better democracy. Now, while doubtlessly true, this felt a little limited. Because the core thesis here was people don't engage because they don't care. On a city level, that just kind of rang hollow. I know Toronto to be a very, very civically passionate city. Small example, if you were to stand somewhere on, let's say, a Yonge and Eglinton, as some of us had done once, and ask people what are their thoughts on bike lanes, I'm willing to gander that at least half of the people who stop will have a strong opinion about bike lanes. Might be for, might be against, it'll probably be nuanced, but they will have an opinion. So if we take Toronto as having around 2.3 million voting age adults, let's just take that 50% number, I'll gander that that's conservative, and say 1.15 million people have some significant opinion on bike lanes. In 2024, there was an item about the 2025 to 2027 cycling network plan that was held right in this room. This was the item where the Infrastructure and Environment Committee talked about what bike lanes are going to be built in Toronto over the course of the next 3 years. 45 people showed up to speak, and about a similar number wrote in. So if we're talking about the number who showed up to speak, that is about 0.004% of the number of people who we think significantly care about bike lanes. I'll put it to you that we can do a lot more with that 0.004% number than we can with the number. And that was a lot of what our project is all about. We think that apathy is due to bad UX, not low motivation. We think that people care plenty. The question is, how is it that we can make democracy more accessible? Now, BJ Fogg is a behaviorist who is very influential in tech circles circa the mid-2000s. And he talked about this equation for the likelihood of a behavior. It is your motivation times your ability times the prompt. So your motivation, how much you care about the thing. Your ability, what is the extent to which you are able to act, you know what to do and are able to do it. And lastly, the prompt. You are given a specific and salient time when to do it. A lot of the efforts in civic engagement, both generally and in our city, are to do with getting people to be more motivated. We think that there is a lot more to do with the ability piece and the prompt piece. And that's, again, what we focus on. We think that our role, at least on the Civic Dashboard project, is to provide the how and the when, not the why. You all already know and that you should engage, and you all already care. The question is, what do I do? How do I do it? And when do I do it? Because there's a lot happening in the city, and that is quite opaque. We think that our role is to take civic motivation and reduce the friction between that civic motivation, turning it into democratic action. So again, turning civic motivation into democratic action. More specifically, we think that if we do that, we are going to have a more accessible and engaged democracy. That a more accessible and engaged democracy is better functioning and more resilient and ultimately more representative. And that's worth working on. So over the past 9 months or so, 35 plus active contributors, a whole lot more folks in this Slack channel and others, 3 supporting organizations. Thank you to Civic Tech Toronto. Thank you to the Open Data team. And thank you to 1RG for supporting these efforts. Over the course, 9 months, 42 Hacknights. We, in time for Democracy Exchange this year, were able to put out version 1 of Civic Dashboard. And we're really excited to share that with you today. Okay, so here's a quick run through what we built so far, focusing exclusively on what you can find right now on civicdashboard.ca, which I encourage you all, which rarely happens in a presentation, to pull out your phones and go to civicdashboard.ca so that you can play around and not just trust the screenshots. So 3 core products on the page right now, alongside a whole lot of organizational stuff. First is our How Council Works page. So we had a whole research team that kind of took an expansive view of how council works and then boiled it down into one link that we hope was a good explainer for somebody who does not know how council works, and takes them from I don't know to I now know how it is that I can act within it. There is so much more to do within this, but right now we have a one good shareable link with some beautiful illustrations that we have been enjoying sending to people and encourage you to as well. The next kind of steps of this, we think about not only expanding to other media to make it accessible to folks who have an easier time, for example, watching a video instead of reading, but also putting up like a people-powered wiki of how the city works and how it really works. The next feature that was built out was the counselors page. So right now you can go there, find your counselor, and then see all of the items that they had voted on, both in council and in committee. You see a summary of this item, you see how they voted, the decision body, and so on and so forth. We have been experimenting with some AI-generated summaries, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. On every item that we do have an AI-generated summary on, we also have the original text so that you're never taking our word for it. But the idea here is to take really bureaucratic political language and turn it into something that's accessible so that you can figure out whether or not this is relevant to you. Lastly, we have an actions page. So this is a page on which you can see all of the agenda items that you can act on in the city today. We've got a bunch of filters on there. You can filter by like category tags. You can filter by decision body. So for example, the Infrastructure and Environment Committee deals with infrastructure and environment. If you want something more specific, like let's say the TTC board, you can filter for that too. You can also, after doing that filtering, you can sign up for email alerts, such that if there is not an item that is currently relevant to you, we will send you an email every day with whatever items fit your filters, so that when something relevant happens, it is in your inbox and you know what that is. We also have individual pages for each of the items that make it easier for you to share them. Let's say something is relevant, you can send that link to somebody. And lastly, we have 2 action buttons right now, request to speak and submit a comment. If you click either one of those, we will open up a relevant email, and that email is going to be directed to the correct body within the city, and either submit a comment or sign you up to depute, which is the city word for speaking. I'm having a little like connecting thing. Are folks online still able to hear me?
Yep.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep. Amazing. Okay. The next question we have is, sorry, we're just having, I'm just going to reshare a screen. Boom. Okay. The question we were asking was, who are we building for? Now, we have a whole user research process that was run by and large by our design team that I want to take you through here before handing off to like the meat of how it is that we've developed what we've developed. But we had to answer this question when you're designing for the democracy of a city like Toronto, 2.8 million people, one of the most plural and diverse cities in the world. How do you go about that? Quick thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Who here has heard of an adoption curve? Okay, somewhere there. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Personas as a concept? Okay, very persona literate crowd. Great. So for those in the middle or down, the adoption curve basically says that there are going to be people for any given idea or technology that adopt it earlier, and then people who adopt it later. And so we were thinking of who would be the earliest adopters of a piece of software that helps you engage with the city. And we broke those people up into personas to kind of narrow down our search as to who will co-build our software with us to start. And so when we talked about these people, we talked about democracy power users and engaged citizens. And so these earliest adopters, the people who will use probably the earliest, most broken version of a tool, we were talking about democracy power users. These are people whose jobs or core roles already revolve around engaging with city politics. And so these are people who are using MacGyvered or maybe even more advanced versions of the tool that we are already developing. There's not a lot of them in the city, and they don't need to be motivated to do anything with council, but these are people who are very influential towards engaged citizens and frankly, the rest of our democracy. So specifically, we're talking about organizers and activists, folks who organize others to achieve political ends. We're talking about a broad category we call policy wonks, endearingly, people whose whole job is policy, who try to craft better policy, understand it better, and make our city better in that way. And lastly, journalists, those who either officially or like through passion try to inform people, their constituency or their audience about what is happening in the city. These are people who are really already staying on top of the city and people whose opinion on our tool we care about in part, not because they need it to engage necessarily, but because they are very influential with respect to how everybody else interacts with it. But we think that this like core group, this group where if we just get them, then Toronto is a fundamentally different city, is engaged citizens. Still not already like the majority of our city, but there is more than enough people in Toronto, if we're again talking about a city of 2.8 million, that if a significantly larger proportion of engaged citizens turn their passion into action, democratically speaking, we have a far more representative democracy. So when we think about like those kinds of personas, we talk about like a spark plug, people who are maybe already part of an organization, already volunteering, already turning passion into action, but maybe just not turning it into like democratic action or action within these halls. We talk about a megaphone. I think we all probably know somebody like this because they're quite loud, right? Like people who have strong opinions and they are letting them be known either in person or online. You don't have to ask them their opinion. They'll tell you. And then the last bit is the academic. We also, again, probably a lot of them in this room, but I don't mean a formal academic, although those two. I mean somebody who could tell you everything about like their niche interest, be it bike lanes, be it infrastructure, be it water, be it noise, whatever the case may be. They really know about it. They really care about it. A lot of the time, they satiate their passion through acquiring more knowledge. They don't engage democratically. And so these are the people where we don't need to tell them to care. They already do. We need to take the civic motivation and turn it into action. Our user research process for speaking to and understanding these people kind of centers around these core principles of being anonymized. So whenever it is that we take in information, we strip any identifying details away from the person. Them being open. All of the data that we collect is open both completely within our team, but also by extension to anybody, because ours is an open organization. And then lastly, being multimodal and continuous. We want there to be lots of different ways for us to collect information about people and also for them to give us feedback. So yeah, like we see a whole bunch of them here. We used a survey to kick off the project, and we plan on running more in the future as this kind of broad way of understanding our audience and maybe our oncoming audience. Feedback forms are available on the site at all times, and anything that is put into the feedback form goes directly into our main Slack channel, so we all see it, and that is very much the guiding light behind everything that we do. Every time we get a piece of feedback, there's a discussion under it. We do user interviews. We did a whole bunch of them to start this project. But right now, again, anybody on the website can sign up for a user interview. You just send the availability and somebody from our team gets in touch. And lastly, we're trying this thing of a user research toolkit. We understand that we don't have access to every community in the city. Inherently, we have access more to those who are closer to us. Now, as we expand, we would like to, again, we would like to change that. We would like to make a truly representative tool. But we put together this toolkit such that we can give it to you and you can become a user researcher on behalf of our team, because you are in the best position to speak to your community and we want to hear from them. So this research culminates in design decisions. And now I'm going to hand it off to Sharmeena online to speak to how we go about UX design, or how we have up to this point.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me? So yeah, I am part of the design team. I'm going to walk you a little bit through our design process. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. So I actually joined Civic Dashboard a little bit after it started, and I was really happy to see how everything had been documented by the design team before we even started design. We had this giant document where we documented all our research, analysis, and ideas. Some of the things we did before we started design included looking at pages and touch points for the current City of Toronto's website, understanding how do residents use this platform and what pages do they use. We also looked at the city council process and tried to understand the flow of how decisions are made. We, as Ilya talked about, we had interviews and we grouped some of the major pain points that came across those interviews. Also, we looked at design patterns and what we could draw from and learn from. So that was all before we started designing. And then on to the next slide. In terms of design, we identified several design gaps. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I will be talking about the agenda item card because that is a good example of how we approach design. But we had many design gaps throughout this process. So on the side, you see a picture of the agenda item as it normally appears on the City of Toronto website. It's a pretty central page for people to understand. And we had two gaps to address with this. So the first was obviously to make it quickly scannable and understandable to the user, to the average resident. And then the second one was that we also needed a consistent and reusable design for this page that could be replicated across the multiple pages that we have. So we have the action page, the councillor page. We needed something that could be replicated and understandable throughout these pages. So our solution for this card, we can go to the next slide. We decided to create something called a reusable master agenda item card. The goal of this, while designing, was to make it digestible, so as easily understandable as possible, consistent and scalable, and also actionable. Focusing on these three things, we designed the card. We tried to understand how to break down information in a way that was easily understandable to people. And so the main thing about this card and why it's reusable and a MasterCard is because information can easily be plugged in or removed depending on the type of agenda item that we're dealing with. So for example, if you look at the action page, that's for upcoming items. So the information is to allow the user to make decisions to take action based on that. For the councillor page, it looks at also how your councillor voted and the total number of votes. So yeah, that's the difference between the pages. And then the third card that you're seeing on the slide shows an expanded view. So if you click into that agenda item card, you're able to see more information. So yeah, this whole thing is really a work in progress. These are our first three layouts of different cards that we've designed so far. We can go to the next slide. And some of the things we've learned throughout this process is it really wasn't just about making it look nice. It was really about being very intentional. So residents are coming in with all kinds of needs from people who want information quickly. And we needed something to feel that felt approachable and trustworthy without overwhelming people. So that was really important. And the second thing was that by creating this reusable agenda item card, it helps to keep us consistent and aligned. And it now sort of allows us to add layers to this card. So we're able to add new elements or take them away, depending on the testing and the user feedback that we get. So I will now pass it on to Garo, who will continue.
Hello, can people hear me? Okay, so yeah, I'm here to talk about the tech side. I'm just going to kind of quickly just say so much lingo and information and hope that people can come ask more questions after, because there's a lot to cover just in terms of our process and tools and how we operate. We took a picture early in our process of trying to understand the data model here. And so this is kind of like the different tables and pieces of information that we get from the City of Toronto's databases. And then the next slide is going to be an architecture diagram that is simplified and missing some pieces. But basically, I'll explain TIMIS and open data on the next slides, but the data comes from there and it comes through our scripts and kind of reoccurring tasks in GitHub and ends up in our database. And then it gets pulled out of there by our web app and reoccurring tasks again to get into your browser and your email updates. Next slide is talking about where our data comes from. So this is, I guess, just to contrast the process of getting data out of the Toronto Meeting Management Information System. We figured out how to do that by going into the browser inspector while we were on the website and figuring out what queries were being sent back and forth, and it was quite nightmarish. And then the next slide is our mini advertisement for the Toronto Open Data team, which is a much nicer way to consume data if it is available. So that's kind of like where the data we're getting is coming from on the City of Toronto side. And then I forget what's on the next slide, so this will be a surprise. Yeah, how we collaborate. So yeah, we do a couple different things to kind of keep our collaboration working smoothly. Something I'd never experienced before this project was we have preview deployments. So basically, whenever we make a change to the website, we get like a second version of the website that we can check for problems before actually updating the real website, which is fantastic. And we also have checks that run on all of the code changes we make to make sure that our database migrations are working and our linting is working. And we kind of try to like just keep all of our code merged into the main code base as often as possible, because we struggled at the beginning with having too many branches. And we just kind of like will have unfinished work that's in the website, but it's just not linked to. So if you're adventurous enough, you can find random pages we're still working on that aren't ready yet. And yeah, we do some task tracking with GitHub projects, and a lot of these features are kind of run through GitHub, which gives you a lot of really nice free features if you're an open source project. So that's cool. And hopefully that for-profit corporation never stops doing nice things for the community. Next slide. Yeah, okay. So this is, I guess, just some of high-level overview of some of the principles we've been trying to operate on as a project. We want it to be fairly independent and not get locked into any single platform provider or anything like that. So we're trying to kind of keep everything as simple as possible. We just have a database, and then we have one single code base that is our whole web app backend, front end. And those are both using standard tools that should be easy to move to another platform if we need to. And we kind of use our database for as many things as we can. We don't have a separate tool for full text search right now, although we are experimenting with one. And we use it as a task queue as well if we need to. So that's that. We wanted the project to be really easy to onboard new contributors because we have a lot of volunteers coming through rather than like a small team of full-time engineers. So we try to keep our docs up to date, have nice continuous integration workflows, and use tools that are really widely adopted to increase the chances people will just already know how to use things like React and JavaScript and SQL. And we wanted it to be easy to experiment with new features. I'm kind of reading off the slide here, so maybe I can just skip a couple bullet points. I guess things to highlight. Baked data is kind of a less known term, but there's a number of features on our website that work by basically the data gets updated because we just redeploy the website every hour, and then the website just has a bunch of the data baked into it as static data instead of being in a database. And that's a really cool way to experiment with a new feature without having to actually do all of this database work. The whole thing can just live in the backend if you work that way. And then, yeah, AI, LLMs might be helpful, but we're trying to not just like be all in on them and kind of use them in ways where you can still see the underlying data that they're based on, or maybe use them for tagging, but still show you the full data set. So I think a number of people on the project have a lot of thoughts about this. So if you're interested in that or anything else, feel free to ask. Next slide. And then, okay, this is just like purely a reference slide for any nerds that are interested. So I will just waffle for long enough for people to read the slide, and then there it goes. Okay. I'm passing it off to Jasper, I think.
Yes, thank you, Garo. And if you guys
And-
can't hear me, please tell me. I'm trying to yell, but good. Okay. All right, guys. I like feedback and like asking for help. So if I'm making you fall asleep, please raise your hand. That's good feedback for me. With that, let's get started. So one of the things for collaborating, especially for a project like a civic project, is we are all volunteers. No one's getting paid. People have other things to do. People have other commitments, so people may drop off. So one of the first things you want to tackle is building momentum. So next slide. So before we get into that, so one of the things that's very crucial is that we have a core idea. Here's kind of an example I have of like what we're trying to do, but I think I don't need to go into that in depth. We kind of like had a really good preview into that. But the key thing is that you want to know that you want to make sure that everyone involved is aware of the core idea. And one of the things we did is at the start of every hack night, we took 5 minutes, went over the core idea, which is, hey, we want to make democracy accessible. We kept repeating that because one, there may be new folks. So you want to make sure they're onboarded. But two, like people may come, people may drop off, people may forget. So you want to reiterate that thing so that the core idea is something that people do not forget. So that's the number one thing that we really tried to do. And we did a really good job of, which is making sure the core idea is something that is not lost, which kind of helps us collaborate even better. Which moving on to the next slide, which is our principles, which the first thing is progress, not perfection. I'm sure Garo mentioned about multiple branches. We have had multiple repositories. Sometimes, we had like, development work start before design, before research is ready. But that's bound to happen in a volunteer project where, folks are pitching in where they can. So it's really not about perfection, but it's about progress. It's about building that momentum. Once you get the ball rolling, a lot can happen. So it's really about making sure that there is a space for folks to be like, hey, I have an idea, I want to do it, let them do it. So it's really about progress and not perfection. The second thing that we really did well is distributed ownership, which is, let's say Milan shows up here and he's like, hey, have a great idea of like making this website. Cool, let's do it. Or let's say Matthew, or as we call him, Mr. Matt. No, we don't call him that. But anyway, let's say someone else comes up with another idea and says that, this is something I think we should do. Great, let's do it, because it's about encouraging people to kind of have that buy-in and making sure that people feel like they can contribute and being open to ideas, which kind of leads me to the third thing that we have done really good, which is open people. We're always welcoming people. And again, kind of a shout out, we are not done. This is just phase 1. So people who want to help out, please join in. So we're open to people, open to ideas. You have a great idea after looking at this presentation, great. Talk to us. We want to hear people. We want to help know how we can make this even better. Obviously open to process. If I had like a penny for the number of times we change tools, I won't be a millionaire, but I'll have 20 cents. So we've changed tools, we've changed processes, but that's the key thing, which is we want to like hear from people, see what works and change things, because we're here to like get stuff done. So we want to be open. We want to make sure there's always progress. And of course, we want to make sure that if people have ideas, like, please go ahead. And again, plug, please come here if you have ideas or want to help. So that's kind of our core principles, and kind of finally finishing off some of the collaboration and tooling that we have used. One of the things we did early on was that we were kind of a smaller team, so we just worked together as one group, but we had a good problem. A lot of people got interested. We had a big team, and that meant splitting up folks into different groups. There's the Slack channels over which shows you that there's a Slack channel for like our data pipeline, research, user experience, development. So we kind of split people into different groups, and during each hack night, based on need, we either have like an engineering squad having their own discussion, a design squad having their own discussion, research doing their own thing. So essentially a place where people within functional groups can get together, discuss stuff, make decisions, so that over the course of the week, they can do more stuff. But also we encourage cross collaboration. And that was actually a feedback we got. We were like, hey, design is working on stuff, engineering is working on stuff. When do we talk to each other? Great feedback. Let's make sure that happens. So it's really about making sure that, one, we are hearing people, but also like splitting people into groups so that they can do what they need to do. Another thing is also, one of the things we did is like at the start of every session, at the end of every session, we had a show and tell. Place for people to come up with updates of like, hey, this is what I did, this Hacknight, this is what we decided, so that other groups can know what you're doing. It's not like we are in our own silos, but also a space so that once you collaborate as a design team, or once you collaborate as an engineering squad, you kind of come together and share your stuff. And finally, I'll just quickly run through some of the tools. Again, we have changes over time, but Slack has always been a constant. It's accessible, easy for people to join in, a great place. And they also added task management recently, which is fantastic. But all in all, Slack is great, and that's been our cornerstone throughout. We've definitely switch between different things. GitHub is a place that got really well into detail, but so I'm not going to dive too much into it, but GitHub's another great place for tracking stuff. And finally, Penpot. This is something I want to highlight because we started with Figma for designs collaboration, but Penpot is much better. So shout out to Penpot. If you guys are looking to collaborate, look into them. But that's me. Some of the tools for collaboration. On to the next slide, which is, there you go.
Thank you, Jasper. Okay, wrapping up quickly. You're all in the room here. Thank you for listening. I want to just emphasize on where you fit in part on where this project is at right now. So one, we're live. Get to dashboarding. Use this tool to engage with the city, right? That is the number one thing that you can do both for the city and for us to understand this tool better. Tell your civically nerdy friends about it. If it's not something interesting to you right now, but you want to keep up, follow us for updates. We have an email newsletter. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Blue Sky. If there's somewhere else you should be, let us know. We'll consider it. Lastly, if you are already on the Civic Tech Slack, if not, you should join there. You can join us at the user Civic Dashboard if you don't want all the project stuff, but only want the user stuff. That is the easiest way for you to keep up with the project. We've talked about feedback. Not going to go into it again, but there's a whole lot of ways to get feedback. And specifically at the breakout after this, we're probably going to take over that area over there. And we would love, love, love to hear your feedback. Going to be a great many-to-many discussion. So again, it is the lifeblood of this project. We would love to have you fit in there. We are currently in a place where we're iterating. We've released V1, but now there's so many different ways, places for this to go. I'm not going to go through all of those items, but you see there's a lot of stuff on the board. And basically what we want to tell you is, regardless of what your skill set is, not just if you are a software engineer, not just if you're a designer, product manager, we've got people here who have never touched a tech project before, people who come from a background of writing, people who come from a background of just being engaged citizens, people who are passionate volunteers, folks who, we had an illustrator join the project from afar. We had folks who also joined the project who are passionate Torontonians, but not even in Toronto. Garo also has been contributing to this project from Victoria. We've had like Sarah contributing from New York. We had somebody recently emailed to want to start contributing from Dublin. Regardless of what the shape of contribution you want, we have a place for you, and we are set up so that whatever time and energy you put in, not only are we able to slot it in, but we are able to make it actually count towards what you see on the screen. If there is not something in here that you see, but that you want on the project, tell us what excites you. We will very likely say yes and say go for it. And that's really the last thing to say there. Like, this project was done very much horizontally. It was done by 35 people, and ever growing, and an ever growing Slack channel. We are set up to take on lots of people. We are as democratic a project as we as the city that we want to engage with. I know we just got a new prime minister like last night, this morning, so it's fair for people to take a break from all this democracy stuff, you know? But tomorrow, next week, next month, this city will still be here. And this city will still need your contribution and will only improve as you do. The current iteration of Toronto City Council and Toronto's democracy is only around 27 years old. You know, so it's definitely got some layers to it. A lot of people would call it a behemoth, but like any 27-year-old, it can really change, and it can specifically change with your input. In a lot of ways, we think that our project is very much like the democracy that we have in the city right now. It's imperfect, it is new, but it's also the best thing we have. And it is only going to improve with input from you and people exactly like you. So that's kind of our challenge to you, both with this tool and in general. And we sincerely hope you take us up on the offer. Thank you for listening.